All right, guys. Now we'll be talking about what causes a deficit in current account of the balance of payment. This is the most repeated question in every part of economics questions related to balance of payment current account. What causes a deficit? Now, what exactly is a deficit in the current account of the balance of payment? This occurs when there is more outflow than inflows. That means there's more money going out of the economy from the current account and less money coming into the current account. There are actually 10 points that I've explained. So, if in case you forget it in the exam, so you'd at least remember half of them, that's 5 of them. This would probably be sufficient enough for you to construct an answer, depending on how big the question is. For example, if it's 12 marks, 8 marks, depends on that. Let's come back to the point. What causes a deficit in current account of the balance of payment? Now, what can create a deficit? That means more outflows than inflows. High prices in the local market. For instance, in a country, the prices starts to increase. Let's suppose there's inflation. So what would happen in that case? The other country, or maybe in the international market, the competitiveness of that particular product would start to decrease. So there would be a decrease in exports over the period of time. So that means there would be less receipts. That's less inflows coming into the economy, thereafter creating a deficit in the current account. It's not necessary that it always has to be by inflation. It can even be by an increase in price of one particular product that the economy sells to the rest of the world. For example, if there is let's suppose an increase in price of, let's suppose a country produces just one good and the price of that particular one good increases. So in that case, there would be a decrease in demand. If the price of that particular product increases, people would switch towards some other country and they probably would buy from some other country. So that means the exports of this particular country that is facing an increase in price of that particular one product would eventually decrease its exports. So it can be caused by inflation. It can be an increase in price of just one product as well. Now, if we talk about the second part, that is a stronger currency. Now, let's suppose that there is an appreciation or a revalue in the currency. So once the currency becomes stronger, let's suppose maybe currently $1 is equivalent to 160 rupees right now. So now let's suppose if I want to buy something worth $1 from USA, it would cost me 160 Pakistani rupees. Let's suppose now if Pakistani rupee becomes stronger, now I need less Pakistani rupees. Probably I just need, let's suppose, 50 rupees now are capable enough to buy $1. So that means rupee has become stronger. So now whatever I was buying earlier that was costing me 160 rupees, $1, 160 rupees, now it would cost me how much? Just 50 rupees. I would probably buy so many things from abroad. This would increase the amount of imports, inflows, and the outflows probably might remain the same. So that means the current account would go into deficit. Okay. Keep one thing in mind, that stronger currency makes imports more economical. Less protectionism can, the third part says less protectionism or trade barriers. Now let's suppose the government decreases the tariff, the government decreases quota. Are we getting it? The government decreases the quota, and let's suppose the government decreases its embargoes. So what would happen in that case? If there is a relaxation in the trade barriers, there's a reduction in the trade barrier or protectionism. So what would happen in that case? There would be an increase in inflows, imports in that country, not inflows, imports. So what would happen in that case? There would be more money going out of the economy. So that would create the current account into deficit. Okay, the fourth point shows that poor quality of local goods. So let's suppose there's a decrease in quality of whatever the economy is producing. So in that case, what would happen? There would be a decrease in demand for this particular product from let's suppose our country. There would be a decrease in demand for this particular product. So what would happen? The exports would start to decrease. So that means the inflows would start to decrease. So that means the current account would go into deficit. Okay, poor performance of EPZ. EPZ stands for Export Processing Zone. Now, this is a department of the government that finds market for locally produced goods in the international market. Now let's suppose if the EPZ is not performing well, so local producers will be producing that good, but they won't be able to sell it much in the international market. So that means this can also create a deficit in the current account of the balance of payment. Let's suppose, now 6 point, let's suppose there is a recession in the other country. Let's suppose earlier Pakistan was selling to Dubai, UAE. Now UAE goes into recession. Would they be buying more from us or less from us? They would be buying less from us. So that means our export would start to decrease. If the major trading partner goes in recession, that means our export would start to decrease, because that trading partner would be buying less from us because that particular country would be in recession. So that means the export would start to decrease. The inflows would start to decrease. So that means what would happen in that case? It would create a current account deficit. The 7th point, production of primary goods. There are a lot of economies, especially developing economies, they produce primary goods and they export them, fine. They import secondary goods, that is finished form. They export raw form and they import finished form. So that means this is more expensive. This is, let's suppose, $100 and this is just $40. So that, let's suppose they export worth $40 and they buy that particular thing in finished form in 100 rupees, $100. So that means there is a deficit. Or they import a lot of tertiary goods. So this would also create a deficit in the current account. Okay, the 8th point, decrease in remittances. Let's suppose there is a decrease in remittance, especially developing countries, they rely heavily on remittances, that is money coming into the economy by relatives working abroad, sending money to their relatives, friends in the home country. So if there is a decrease in remittance coming into the economy, so this would also create a current account deficit. Where would remittance be recorded in? Remittance would be recorded in the current transfers. Okay, there is the 9th point. If there is a decrease in foreign aid, let's suppose earlier the economy was, let's suppose, receiving a lot of aid. Now there is a decrease in aid. So what would happen? The inflow in the current account, current transfers would decrease. This would also worsen the current account position of the balance of payment. The last point, that's the 10th point, decrease in inflows of profits by businesses owned by residents abroad. Let's suppose now the profits that, for example, Pakistani people have invested in UK, and they were receiving profits from UK from their businesses. Now those businesses are not performing well, so the profit inflow would decrease. So that means the current account, trade in goods, no. Trade in services, no. The investment income would be receiving less amount. So this would also create a current account deficit in the balance of payment. Are we clear with these 10 points? All right, thanks.